The most famous outlaw in American history wasn't running from the law. He was running from a broken promise. William Bonney stood in the dirt streets of Lincoln, New Mexico, watching smoke rise from a burning building. His hands shook, not from fear, from anger. The man who promised him safety had just been murdered, and Billy knew he was next. This is 1878. The American Southwest is raw and lawless. Towns pop up overnight. Fortunes are made in cattle and land, and powerful men crush anyone who stands in their way. Billy the Kid was 19 years old. He'd worked as a ranch hand, a cook, a gambler. He wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found him anyway. To understand why Billy became the most wanted man in America, you need to know about John Tunstall. Tunstall was a young Englishman with money and ambition. He came to Lincoln County to start a ranch and a store. He treated his workers fairly. He paid them on time. In a place where most bosses saw their men as disposable, Tunstall was different. Billy started working for him in late 1877. For the first time in years, he had stability. He had respect. Tunstall saw something in Billy, maybe potential, maybe just a good worker. Either way, Billy was loyal. But Tunstall had enemies. Lincoln County was controlled by a group called the House. Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan ran it. They owned the biggest store, the bank, most of the land. They had the sheriff in their pocket. If you wanted to survive in Lincoln County, you played by their rules. Tunstall refused. He opened a competing store. He offered better prices. He challenged their monopoly. Murphy and Dolan couldn't allow that. In the West, business disputes weren't settled in courtrooms. They were settled with guns. On February 18, 1878, a posse rode out to seize Tunstall's cattle. They claimed it was legal. It wasn't. The sheriff had deputized a group of thugs and sent them to destroy Tunstall's livelihood. Tunstall was riding alone when they found him. He wasn't armed for a fight. He tried to talk. They shot him in the chest. Then they shot him in the head. Then they shot his horse and laid its body over him. Billy wasn't there when it happened, but he heard about it fast. He rode to Lincoln and saw Tunstall's body laid out. The only man who'd ever treated him with decency, murdered in cold blood. And the killers? They were walking free, protected by the same law that was supposed to bring justice. Billy made a choice that day. He could run, or he could fight. He chose to fight. Billy joined a group called the Regulators. They were Tunstall's men, now led by a foreman named Dick Brewer. Their mission was simple: find the men who killed Tunstall and make them answer for it. The law wouldn't help them, so they became the law. On March 9th, the Regulators tracked down two of the killers, Billy Morton and Frank Baker. They surrendered without a fight. The Regulators promised to take them to Lincoln for trial, but they never made it. Somewhere on the trail, Morton and Baker were shot, executed. Billy was there. Whether he pulled the trigger or not, he was part of it. And now he was marked. The House wanted revenge. Sheriff William Brady was their man. He issued warrants for the Regulators. They were no longer vigilantes seeking justice. They were outlaws. On April 1st, 1878, Billy and 5 others hid behind a wall in Lincoln. They waited for Sheriff Brady to walk past. When he did, they opened fire. Brady fell in the street, dead before he hit the ground. Billy the Kid had just killed a lawman. There's no going back from that. Let me pause here for a second. Are you hooked on this story? If you are, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, You'll want to hear how this ends. Now, back to Billy. After Brady's death, the violence exploded. The House sent more gunmen. The Regulators fought back. Lincoln County turned into a war zone. Shootouts in the streets, ambushes on the trails, houses burned, men disappeared. The governor of New Mexico finally stepped in. His name was Lew Wallace. He'd been a Civil War general. Now he was trying to bring order to a territory spinning out of control. He issued a proclamation. Everyone involved in the violence would be pardoned, if they stopped fighting. Billy wanted that pardon. He was tired. He'd lost friends. He'd seen too much blood. He wanted out. Governor Wallace agreed to meet with him. They sat down in March 1879. Wallace promised Billy a full pardon if he testified against the leaders of the House. Billy agreed. He testified. He told the truth about the corruption, the murders, the conspiracy. And then Wallace broke his promise. The pardon never came. Billy waited. Weeks turned into months. He realized the truth. Wallace needed him as a witness, not as a free man. Once Billy had served his purpose, he was disposable. Billy felt betrayed. Again. The one time he trusted the system, it failed him. So he went back to the only life he knew. He started stealing cattle. He gambled. He drank. He made a name for himself as a gunslinger. Newspapers picked up the stories. They exaggerated them. They called him a cold-blooded killer. They said he'd murdered 21 men, one for each year of his life. It wasn't true, but the legend was more powerful than the truth. By 1880, Billy the Kid was the most wanted man in New Mexico. A new sheriff took over Lincoln County, Pat Garrett. He'd been a friend of Billy's once. Now he was hunting him. Garrett was relentless. He tracked Billy across the territory, through the desert, through the mountains, through every hideout and safe house. On December 19, 1880, Garrett cornered Billy and his gang at a place called Stinking Springs. They were trapped in an old stone building. No food, no water, no way out. After a tense standoff, Billy surrendered. He didn't want his friends to die for him. He was taken to Mesilla for trial, found guilty of murdering Sheriff Brady, sentenced to hang. But Billy wasn't ready to die. On April 28, 1881, he was being held in the Lincoln County Courthouse. 2 guards watched him. Billy asked to use the outhouse. On the way back, he made his move. He slipped one hand free from his shackles. He grabbed a guard's gun. He shot both men. Then he walked out the front door, free again. For 2.5 months, Billy disappeared. Garrett searched. So did bounty hunters, posses, federal marshals. Nobody could find him. Then Garrett got a tip. Billy was hiding at a ranch near Fort Sumner, a place owned by a man named Pete Maxwell. On the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett rode out with 2 deputies. They arrived after midnight. Garrett went into Maxwell's bedroom to ask if he'd seen Billy. The deputies waited outside. Billy had been out that night. He came back late. He was hungry. He walked into Maxwell's house to get some food. He saw 2 men standing in the shadows outside the bedroom. He didn't recognize them. He pulled his knife and stepped into the bedroom to ask Maxwell who they were. Garrett was sitting on the bed. In the dark, Billy didn't see him. He asked, "Who are those men outside?" Garrett recognized his voice. He pulled his revolver and fired twice. The first bullet hit Billy in the chest, just above his heart. He fell. He tried to speak. Then he stopped moving. Billy the Kid was dead. He was 21 years old. Garrett became famous. Newspapers praised him as the man who killed the West's most dangerous outlaw. But people who knew the truth had questions. Why did Garrett shoot an unarmed man in the dark? Why didn't he try to arrest him? Some said Garrett was a hero. Others said he was a coward. Billy's body was buried the next day in Fort Sumner. No trial, no ceremony, just a quick burial in the desert. But his story didn't end there. People couldn't stop talking about him. Dime novels turned him into a myth. Some painted him as a ruthless killer. Others saw him as a rebel who fought corrupt power. The truth was somewhere in between. Billy the Kid wasn't born a criminal. He was forced into it by a system that protected the rich and crushed the poor, by men who broke their promises, by a world where justice was a luxury most people couldn't afford. He killed men, that's true, but he didn't start the violence. He responded to it. When John Tunstall was murdered, Billy could have walked away. He could have found work somewhere else, but he stayed because loyalty meant something to him, because he believed someone had to stand up. The Lincoln County War didn't end with Billy's death. The violence faded, but the corruption remained. Lawrence Murphy died of illness. James Dolan lived on, unpunished. Governor Wallace never faced consequences for breaking his promise. Pat Garrett's fame didn't last. He died broke and forgotten, shot in the back during a land dispute. But Billy, his name lived on. People still argue about him today. Was he a hero or a villain? A victim or a killer? The answer is complicated. He was a young man caught in a brutal time, trying to survive in a place where survival meant making impossible choices. The real reason Billy the Kid became America's most wanted wasn't because he was evil. It was because he refused to accept injustice. He fought back when he was supposed to stay quiet. He challenged power when he was supposed to bow down. And that made him dangerous. Not to the people, to the system. The West was built on stories like Billy's. Stories of men who lived fast and died young. Stories of violence and loyalty and broken promises. Stories that remind us the line between hero and outlaw isn't always clear. Billy the Kid didn't choose the life he lived, but he chose how he lived it, on his own terms, until the very end. And maybe that's why we still remember him, not because of what he did, but because of what he represented. A refusal to be crushed, a refusal to disappear quietly, a refusal to let powerful men decide his fate without a fight. He lost in the end, but he went down swinging. And in the harsh, unforgiving world of the Old West, maybe that was the only kind of victory that mattered.